So it's 5 o'clock, so let's kick off. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Visual Fox Pro Migration Real World Stories. I think most all of you know me, or at least have heard my name along the way. We've probably met in Phoenix a few times over the last number of years, and we've always had excellent discussions. But with us today, we have three gentlemen who are really cut from the exact same cloth as each of you. So this is going to be a very fun conversation because you can ask people questions much more technical than you can ask me, and they'll actually be able to respond to them. So let me just tell you the format of how today's session will go. I'm going to introduce our three panelists, give a brief bio on each, just a minute or two each. Then each of the three panelists are going to have, let's say, 5 minutes to introduce themselves, introduce their company, and introduce their project. So just kind of give an overview and a flavor of what they did. So that's going to take us, these first two elements will probably take us through the first 20 minutes thereabouts of our discussion. Then the real element is panelist questions. So I have a list of an initial 4 questions to ask the panelists, and then I am hoping to see the chat light up with a bunch of questions from the audience, or people have the ability to ask to share audio and video, at which time you'll pop up on the bottom of my screen. I'll approve you, and then your picture will show up, and you'll be able to ask the question to either one of the panelists or all 3 of the panelists. So that's how the session's going to work. This is different than any other session. This is the supposed to be highly interactive. This is not a talk at you session, but a discussion. So we hope for lots of questions and interest. But I think everybody's really going to enjoy this session. So let me start by introducing Patrick Bibro. Patrick's with Golden Care. Golden Care is an insurance company that does long-term care insurance as people get older and they need to be cared for. Working with their organization, their health, your parents, or even yourself as you're getting older might need their services. You never know. Started using VFP back in '95, so he's not new to the game at all, and he's going to tell you a little bit about their Visual Fox Pro application, what it did, and how they went about their Visual Fox Pro journey. So Patrick's from Minnesota. Dave Martin. Dave and I have known each other, I don't know, long time. He's in the center for me. I'm not sure where he is for everybody else. But Dave Martin is president of Trace Environmental. Not only is he the president, but he was also the original Visual Fox Pro developer of an application. Dave came out of the military. He was commissioned in the U.S. Army, and he led environmental engineers in Kuwait. And during that time, he was in Operation Desert Storm, and he was monitoring air quality of all the oil fires that were going on. That turned itself into a business where his business now does environmental analytics of emissions going through smokestacks. It's very, very important for emission controls, can never be down, has to be monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because they assume that 5 minutes that you weren't monitoring, you were burning tires. And so they want to make sure that the emissions are clean all the time, and he'll tell you quite a bit about that. And our third panelist is Tom Worrell, and Tom is with Ryder. If you have children that went to college, you probably rented a truck from him at some point to move them in and out of college. So I think everybody knows the rental business of Ryder. They also have a tremendously large fleet business where they manage fleets of trucks and operate fleets, and all the associated logistics about that. And what we're specifically going to talk about is the fueling program that was developed by Tom in Visual Fox Pro a long time ago, and a great program. So now that's the introductions. I'm going to allow each person to go individually through, and in the exact same order, and it was alphabetic, so there was no logic to it other than alphabetic. So Patrick, you go first, and you have to unmute yourself, Patrick.
All right, thank you.
And I can hear you fine.
Great. Yeah. Like John said, my name is Patrick Bibro. I work for a company called Golden Care, and we're we're one of many companies that make up Integrity Marketing Group. We market to the senior market, the 55 plus crowd, which I'm sure some of you are fit into that. We sell long-term care insurance, life products, Medicare products, and the business has been around for about 40 years. I've been here about 15 of those. My story began kind of in college. I got an internship, and that's where I was exposed to Visual FoxPro. Since then, I've moved on to, well, I still use FoxPro, but I've also added some of the .NET languages and for various applications. And really, coming out of that internship, I returned to my regular college job at a friend's insurance agency. And, I thought I knew how to write some code, so I convinced that owner that, we could get off this ACT contact management system and really expand what we could do. He took me up on that offer, and, like any good college kid with 10 weeks of experience, I architected a system which I've maintained for 25 years. And definitely have some regrets about what I did early on, but time heals all wounds, and we've got past it. So this system started just managing leads and sales, kind of the typical things you can think of in any sort of sales industry. Over time, it really got customized to meet what the company was up to. So it has elements of CRM and commission accounting, seminar management, document management, business intelligence, and also over the years we had telemarketing operations. So it had some front-end connectivity to back-end dialers. And the system grew sort of organically, highly tailored to the business that it was designed for. Never intended to go anywhere else. But my boss thought, this was the greatest system in the world, and he thought some other organizations could use it. So he started marketing as such, and eventually we found somebody who wanted to buy it. Company of similar nature, but definitely more complex, a little bigger. And it took me some work to customize it. So I went over to that company, helped them customize it, and 15 years later, I'm still with that company. The other one has gone out of business since, but the application lives on. So my migration journey, I'll try and speed up here a little bit.
Do you want me to advance any of your slides?
Sure, you can start knocking them out. These are just some before and after shots of the application. Really, we started this when VFP8 was introduced, and we had the cursor adapter, and we started with our database, initially hooking it up to a DB2 database and going to SQL Server. But about 3 years ago, we were purchased by a much larger organization, and they essentially gave us till the end of the year to get off of FoxPro. And that's how I came to require the services of Microsoft. And we began the process of planning out what that would be to move to an Angular C# combination to replace what FoxPro had been, keeping the same SQL Server in place. Really, that organization, the risk tolerance turned from pretty high risk tolerance as far as security and just what is the acceptable cost of running a software. We moved all of our servers onto the cloud and began this conversion process of that FoxPro application. So just a few things that we did with that. I created a small team of business users here at the office to help test and provide feedback. I also brought on an internal developer who could help maintain it once the system was completed, just because some of my skill sets and time were limited on this. So, you know, I don't want to go on too long, but, you know, definitely can answer any questions, and we can get into more details in the Q&A. But
right, we're gonna let each of the people introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll get into
sure.
Q&A kind of across everybody, but I want to be fair to everybody.
Yep.
Tom, I guess I didn't put these in alphabetical order. Sorry about that, Dave. We'll go with the W next to Tom. Sorry. So, Ryder Truck.
I have a good bit in common with Dave. After I got out of the military, I went into executive search and figured that I'd be able to find the perfect job there. And I always knew I wanted to be in computers. My training before it was a very extensive hardware background. Before I went in the military, got drafted and went into the Air Force and ended up in communications. So when I was in the executive search, the Apple II came out, and I saw how I could put data together in ways that I could make presentations and say, of all the polymer rheologists in the country, these are the ones, and so on. You know, the stuff we take for granted today. But remember, even 123 wasn't out at that point. There was nothing. So I wrote a database program and the other stuff I needed. And as I worked, I got to know a lot of high-level executives. And finally, I said, I've just got to move over. I had set up a veterinarian and some other customers early on. So I ended up talking to CFO at Ryder and said, you've seen the stuff that I can do. I'd like to come and work with you. And one of the simple things that's amazing that helps is on the IBM computer, the first ones that were out, I just did batch files that put a menu on the screen that was colored with numbers, and the users could just hit the numbers and launch programs. Well, at that time, that was a big deal. And before I went over there, the person in charge said, do you know DBase? Well, on a Thursday, I can relate to Patrick. On a Thursday, I went over to a friend's bike shop, learned DBase, and started developing on Monday for Ryder. Well, it turns out it wasn't too bad a job because we're migrating that program today. So when I went over there, I was really concerned about getting 80 hours ahead so that I'd be able to continue the business. So one of the people that was there said, from what we've seen you do, you'll be here for at least 8 months. Well, that turns out that was 1984. And so here I still am. And most of the systems I created ended up evolving, as Fox tends to do, into some mission critical software. And because we didn't have our head very high, everything worked because I stayed on top of it, mitigating any issues. All of a sudden, one day, somebody decided that I wasn't as young as I used to be. And they also, as happened with Patrick, everyone became much more security conscious. And we've been running off Fox tables all this time. So you can imagine the IT guys were totally horrified. So we had to do the migration. We found Macrosoft. Our stuff is so extensive, I don't know. I certainly couldn't have done any migration on this and would have hated to try to run a team. If you want to put up one of your slides, John, we still have running DOS for one of the environmental data, again, a cross point with David. We have all of the environmental stuff, all the fuel tanks that go in the ground. We keep track of all of that. and what's going on and where they are and all of the. It turns out also that the states have super funds that will allow we can recoup our expenses if we can prove them properly. So with my system, they've been able to recover around $20-30 million. So it's kind of taking care of itself. On the left is the DOS system. On the right is our new version. And also we had 3 separate programs that were created over time that I just linked together with a menu system. We adapted that so all of those are merged into one area with their common elements. That's both good and bad because users, let me tell you, after users have been using something for 30 years, they think it's old until they try something new. So that's where we are. This is one small piece. As John mentioned earlier, really it's in fueling that is a great deal of what we do. You'll notice that this background is what one small screen out of our system. This is fuel carrier management. So it allows the user to see where Ryder stands all across the country in terms of their fuel inventories and so forth. And it's also evolved so that we have a column that's, go back one, that's red, green, or blue, or red, yellow, or green based on where the inventories are. And we also have a column for weather where we go out to the weather service and check for low temperatures. Diesel trucks go down real bad when the temperature gets, even if they're treated, when it gets below -10. So we have to take special care, and that provides an alert. We next have an arbitrage column, which compares our contracts. We tend to go with a couple of different indexes, and if one of those, we can get a 10-cent spread. You know, when you do several 100 million gallons, anything you multiply by that number is a pretty big number. So they have a chance on loads to pick the best deal and pick up daily profits, that kind of thing. So my first experience with Fox was probably at the first Ashton Tate conference, or the second one. I can't remember which one they allowed Fox to come in. Well, as it happened with many people at that time, that was the end of DBase. The performance and everything was so good. So all of these systems have been running since basically 1984, and we're moving them today, C#, Angular, and .NET. So that's kind of it for me for now, John. I hope I wasn't too long-winded.
No, that's fine. Everybody appreciates a good background and introduction. I think it's going to pull out a lot of questions. Dave, you pull up the anchor here for us. So,
all right, I'm the anchor man. Well, my journey in Fox Pro begins about 30 years ago. I was a lieutenant in the Army, in what the Army called the Medical Service Corps, working at a place called the Army Environmental Hygiene Agency, of all places, believe it or not. And really, I can thank Saddam Hussein for bringing me into the Fox Pro world. He lit a bunch of oil fires, a bunch of oil wells on fire in the Persian Gulf. Myself and a team of about 30 soldiers and civilian chemists, we deployed to the Persian Gulf and did a large environmental study during the first Persian Gulf War. When we came back, when we deployed back to the U.S., we brought a ton of samples with us. We analyzed those samples, and the intent was to take that data and merge it with satellite imagery of the plumes from the oil fires, as well as troop movement data. And we basically developed an innovative, what was innovative at the time, a geographical information system that could go through and perform health risk assessments of the for each individual soldier based on where they were. So in managing this massive environmental data, I had to get real good with DBase initially, the DBase 4, and eventually led into Fox Pro. So got out of the military in 1993, eventually worked my way into a company that had what are called continuous emissions monitoring systems in about 1995. So these continuous emissions monitoring systems continuously collect data that's coming from analytical instrumentation that determine or relate the levels of air pollution going up stacks. Things like carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen oxide, sulfur, things like that. This data streams continuously every minute of every day till the end of time. And long story short is co-founded a company called Trace Environmental in 1995. And basically myself and the other co-founder, we had certain expertises. I was an environmental guy with a background in DBase/FoxPro. He was a controls guy, an industrial controls guy with a background in VB. So we just went with it. And we developed a kind of a merged product that we called DAS 2000, DAS standing for Data Acquisition System, where the VB side was doing all the communication to the devices and the instruments, collecting the data, throwing the data into into FoxPro tables, and then on the other end of it, we were running reports and the like utilizing FoxPro. So we kind of merged the two, and in the middle, I wrote years and years ago, something that we call the Magic DLL, or a little DLL, a little COM object that allowed Visual Basic to write to FoxPro and utilize all the referential integrity inside of VFB tables and databases and the like. So long story short, this is kind of architecturally what we've done today. We've taken this product this DAS 2000 product that we probably rolled out to multiple hundreds of clients. 300 to 400 clients are running this software. This stuff runs, as I mentioned, continuously all the time, always collecting data. It can be anything from a very simple setup, one set of analyzers with one programmable logic controller, streaming data to one data acquisition computer, all the way up to our most complex, or 15 or 20 racks of instruments with PLCs and multiple PCs on the network. Data loads are not massive. We're not like, we're certainly not like DHL or FedEx in transaction processing or anything like that. But some of our larger ones will generate 20 to 30 gigs of data per year. We're kind of in that ballpark. So what we've done as part of our migration process, why did we do this? Well, we want to keep the business alive. Let's be straight, right? Okay, FoxPro was working, VB was working, but writing was on the wall. Just not only because of security, but supportability. And every IT guy you run into says, "What do you use?" And you get sick of answering that question. What was important to us was backward compatibility. So we did this in kind of I'm not going to call it innovative, probably a complicated approach, in that we left the old FoxPro tables in place, or we allowed access to SQL Server. And we also, I built into this Magic DLL the ability to run under the hood all the old reports, all the old customized reports, because we allowed our customers to highly customize their own reports on their own, and some of them live and die by these customized reports. So we built inside of a COM object the ability to run all these reports without ever knowing FoxPro's there, collect the data, analyze the data, process it, create a PDF, throw it up on a website for them. So in essence, we've created a .NET application that's still under the hood, utilizes some of FoxPro if we like it. Otherwise, it's SQL Server, and then provides the information to multiple PCs, not necessarily on the World Wide Web, typically on internal WANs and the like. That's really the extent of it. Well, I'll add a little something to it. This has been a long process, as John mentioned. We've been at this for 6 or 7 years at this point. It's a long process because it was important to me to provide backward compatibility to our customers. So our new software has all the exact same functionality. It can utilize the same data sets, and it can produce the same reports in the exact same format, as well as opening up whole new capabilities using .NET and the reporting tools that are available to us. You see in this picture just a little bit of some of the instrumentation. We also build the instrumentation. So software is a piece of what we do. It's maybe a third of what we do, but it's an important piece. It's kind of the glue that ties everything we do together and keeps our customers with us. So that's kind of the instrumentation. Go to the next slide, John. It isn't just a simple little diagram that shows a couple PCs on the network talking to a couple PLCs. Again, we get very complex systems to very simple systems as well. Go to the next. Old FoxPro stuff looks kind of familiar to anyone. I mean, if anyone was doing this in 1995, you kind of remember a product called Query Maker. Upper right-hand corner there, we did ad hoc queries. We built this thing in, and it's still being used today. Left-hand side is the VB app that allows us to configure the system, and then just some basic FoxPro reports. Old school, still works. Now let's go to the next slide, John. Next, keep going. There you go. So this is the new product, and I think this really relates to Tom's experience. Well, Tom he mentioned he had a lot of different software, different programs that he pulled together with menus and like. We had, because we were VB and we were FoxPro, we had completely separate products that were connected underneath via this magic DLL and by databases in essence. So we had, utilities and programs and stuff all over the place. It was really disjointed. Well, using .NET and converting it over to .NET allowed us to do is bring everything under one roof, if you will. So we were able to take all of these disparate utilities, programs, and features and functionality and put it under one logical system that folks could work with. So reception with our customers has been extremely good. We probably, over the last year and a half, we rolled it out to probably 125 of our customers. Probably have another 150, 175 to go. Been a good experience so far. And that's it. That's all I have.
All right. So now I've introduced our three panelists. You've heard from them that they've all been doing this for a long, long time. We're happy to ask different questions. I have a series of questions to kind of start the conversation. Tuvia, I see that you've already jumped up here. Did you have a specific question that you wanted to ask, or should we go into these initial questions?
I don't know if now is a good time for my question or not, and I think you know my question, John. I was listening very carefully, especially David, to your description of the process that you went through. And one thing that's mystifying me is I have not heard yet any reason to have migrated away from FoxPro. From the descriptions, I was about 10 minutes late, so I missed the beginning of the first one. But from the descriptions I've heard of the projects, like David, you spent years going to .NET to get the same features you already had. And there's simply what's the business reason for that?
Let me jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, you know what too? Even in our migration, you look at .NET, we're running with FoxPro tables, and the combination of FoxPro and FoxPro tables means that there are things that happen in seconds in FoxPro that in SQL end up taking, especially with the fact that you don't maintain state when you're running a program in a browser. So there are programs that run for 15, 20 minutes that run in less than 30 seconds on Fox. By optimizing and moving, we can make it better. But I feel the same way that you do. The problem is a business like Ryder won't put up with it because every IT guy in the world laughs because you're running this out-of-date stuff. Capability doesn't matter. Performance doesn't matter. What matters is it's no longer viewed as viable. And we can't change that. The CEO, originally I think they tried for years to figure out a way to get rid of me without even telling me, because it was Fox Pro. But every time they tried, it was, they didn't get anywhere. And there were cases where I went up against them. I had one specific case where my client, who loved me, said, look, we've been working for 6 months with IT to get this program that will allow us to tell when from data from the trucks where they've been running, and if they've been running in certain areas. And they were doing some switch to natural gas. And it was kind of complex because it was around the triangle in Texas, and the center was a hole. And you had to know how many minutes they spent inside that and how many outside and so forth. Well, he told me he was going to get their bid on Friday. So I started on Monday trying to put some stuff together, and I saw, using MatPoint and a couple of other things, that I could put it together. It got better and better as I went along. By Friday, I was able to demo the system, the full system. On Monday, they didn't have their bid on Monday. On Friday, on Monday, they came in with their bid, which was $100,000. And they had no estimate of when it would be done. Tuesday, I delivered the system for $5,700. Okay.
Well, I'm not necessarily advocating the use of Fox Pro tables. However, I mean, there's a certain fragility to the table structure, and I but I want to get back to David, if I can, and that, I saw you nodding, David. I don't know exactly at what point during those 6 years what kind of benchmarks you reached, et cetera, but at some point you would spend X amount of time and X amount of money to get back to the same features that you started with.
And I can't disagree with anything you're saying or anything that Tom said. The drivers for us were customer perception and largely driven by their IT, okay? And there was one more thing, and it was security. And I'll explain that a little bit. We're running a real-time data acquisition system that's continuously talking to a device and continuously streaming data and collecting that data. The problem we had, having developed that piece of it, that actual data collection piece in VB6, was that we had to have a logged-in user all the time on that machine, okay? In order to run the VB6 application, run it all the time, 24/7. So that was, to the sophisticated customer, that was a perceived and a real security risk. So we would have to do an auto login, bring up the bring up the operating system, bring up the software, get it collecting data, and that had to be happening all the time. With .NET, we run as an IIS, in essence, an IIS server. It's at the lowest level. Things just kind of run. So it solved that problem for us. We would have either had to go to C++ or something like that, do a complete port of that piece of our software to C++, and then left the reporting tool as it was. But I hear what you're saying, and it really came down to customer perception.
Well, how does the customer know what's behind the front end?
Well, in our situation, we're largely dealing with engineers. We're dealing with guys and gals who are running and managing complicated pieces of equipment, industrial equipment, maybe a gas turbine that's producing electricity, or a big incinerator or something like that. They're fairly sophisticated people, and when they start asking the questions, we've got to tell them the answer they don't want to hear.
It runs on a LAN, or it runs on a web server?
The old software it was kind of a client server model. This system is on a web. It's kind of web based.
So here's the simple answer: it runs in HTML JavaScript. Everything in the web runs in HTML JavaScript, right? My HTML JavaScript is not going anywhere, at least not for the foreseeable future. So if we, to give you an example, we just converted, using the wrong word. We just updated someone that has, they have nationwide offices, and they need 24/7 uptime, thousands of transactions, at least a few thousand transactions an hour. Serious system. And I went in and they were using Fox Pro Unix, but that's sort of beside the point. There's nothing they can do. So they said, we need a kiosk, and we need web access. We need all these different things. It's all simple to do in FoxPro. There is no capability that I have found, with one exception, that FoxPro can't do. And I know Will Henson and Steve Black have some presentations on, how to convince people that either FoxPro is good or it doesn't matter. It bothers me to see companies spend time and money for nothing.
Well, I think the reality is they're spending time and money to stay in business. Now, I understand your point completely. FoxPro is great. Wonderful tool. I believe it's a wonderful tool. We support people using it. We've built lots of systems in it. We work with lots of people with it. But there are other factors, business factors, beyond technology factors that cause this change. So we're never going to answer this question to your satisfaction. So no matter what,
you are answering it to my satisfaction, because I asked for the business reason, not the technical reason.
Well, the business reason is their clients asked for this change to happen. For them to remain in business, their clients requested this. So be that as may, if you like the answer or not, that is the answer. So we're going to continue on with other questions. I see some other people putting in some questions in the comments. I also have a couple of questions here for the group to keep going. I'm going to ask these general questions to the group, or the three panelists, excuse me, as opposed to individually. Why don't you, kind of jump in as you want? And Patrick, you've been overly quiet since starting.
Yeah, no, I don't mind jumping on this question too.
Well, the first question was factors driving necessity for your migration. So if you want to jump into that, that's sort of the exact same question. So Patrick, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess it comes down to three reasons for us. And the first reason was, we were purchased by venture capitalists, and these venture capitalists do due diligence. And part of that is assessing the software systems. And, like it or not, mine was considered a vulnerability. It's not that there's anything immediately problematic with using FoxPro, but they don't have that same risk tolerance. So, in the same way I can't use Angular 2 or .NET 2, I need to be on a supported version, and that's just a company standard. Everybody, may have different opinions about it, but ultimately the guys writing the checks decided that was the thing. The second thing that they were concerned about was I was the only guy who knew the system. That is, that's a liability. And, part of that's on me for not documenting things better and not sharing in responsibility. But, you can do a lot with FoxPro, and I did. But that's also scary to, a company buying them. They haven't worked with me for 20 years. They don't know what I'm about. They don't know if I'm going to walk out the door. So that was a concern as well. And, just the third is, a standard desktop FoxPro application like we had is not terribly suited for a remote workforce, which is something that became very apparent in 2020 was an issue for us. So we did work around it. We functioned, but it wasn't ideal. And that's where, the new system does exceed the old one.
Well, I can't argue with what your customers want, but when you start getting into the more technical things, remote stuff, that I have to disagree with. In other words, you need a business reason to move away, and too many times I hear people moving away simply because .NET is cooler.
Yeah,
and it is cooler.
Yeah, I would say
a lot cooler.
So for me personally, like I looked at Fox in the cloud as an alternative for the the remote solution, but there you're still doing a conversion, and you're still ending up spending resources to end up in the same place. At least going this route, we're able to bring on new developers easily, and it's not necessarily money best spent, but it's money needed to be spent.
All right, so we've gone through the question factors and necessitating the change, and what, from a business perspective or a technical perspective, how did you prepare? And I see also there's a whole bunch of questions. I see Jody and Steve and others have asked a bunch of questions. So we're going to get to these. And I even see Charles here saying, good questions, Jody. So we'll jump to these. I think I'm going to go back and forth. One of these four and then an individual question. So I'll throw it to the group. How did your company prepare operationally and or technically for a migration project? And I leave that open to whomever wants to respond to that.
But let me talk to that, if you don't mind, John. And again, my approach was unusual in how I kept a lot of backward compatibility with the existing FoxPro application and the existing FoxPro structure. But giving that backward compatibility to the existing structure allowed us, when we rolled the software out, to make it very familiar for the customer. So our preparation, in essence, was to ensure that the product was backwardly compatible and that it would be familiar for the customer to utilize. So those were the two keys for me in our approach to ensure that the rollout of the product would go well.
All right. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'll just agree with both of those points. We did a similar thing where we kept our old system active throughout the migration. We froze any database changes and allowed both systems to coexist for a period of time before essentially pulling the plug on it. And, definitely one thing that I found through this process is that the users were very resistant to change in look and feel. So the closer we kept it, the happier the users ended up being, even if it wasn't necessarily the prettiest design or the way I would like to have seen it go.
Oh, just let me add to that. What Patrick said is right on with what we did. And we have hundreds of customers that we're dealing with. So these are, take hundreds of customers times a handful of people at each site, and you're dealing with a large number of people. So it was really important for us to keep it easy for them to work with. This upgraded software can live side by side with the existing software. So you got the new stuff, you got the old stuff. They both do the same thing, talk to the same databases. Whether it's SQL or whether it's FoxPro, it just didn't matter. So a lot of our customers, to Tuvita's point, is a lot of our customers just keep using the same stuff. Honestly, quite frankly. But we have the new stuff. It has a future, and it keeps the IT folks off our backs.
All right. So I see Jody asked 3 questions. She asked them to everybody, but not all 3 people can answer all 3 questions because we'll be here for 20 minutes on one set of questions. I'm going to ask all 3 in a row, and I'm going to kind of let you guys pick and choose how you choose to answer them. So you can see them also in the chat, but can each of you talk about how Microsoft worked together to collect the requirements so the developers knew what needed to be developed? Then from that, how did you come up to an estimate of how much it was going to cost? And in reality, did it fall within that budget that was planned? So I'm going to throw that over to the group. Tom, I see your hand.
Yeah, I will tell you that I really, really had my doubts about how anybody could make this conversion. There are a lot of good FoxPro people at Microsoft, and they've got some really good tools. And so they were able to go at, for instance, and I will tell you, my folders have a lot of legacy reports and other things in them. It's not clean. And using the project files, the FRX files, and the others, they ran their software against it and came up with the number of tables and reports and other information that they put together. And quite frankly, I was shocked at how low their estimate was and how quick their time frame is. We started, and we're right now at the end, and their estimate is what they stick by. They also did a very good job of establishing deadlines and for everything. So we, from the beginning, we had timelines set out and monitored closely. They also have a good means of creating HTML versions that are not bound to data, so that you can click on a control and go to a screen, and all it's doing is switching the URL, and they rough out the screen. So we were able to do a lot of, no, that screen won't work. We need this here. Where's the Framus and where's the that? So they did all of that in just HTML without bound data and validation and all the things. And that was a big help. All the menus were created. The screens were stubbed in. So we were able to get a good idea of the look and feel before we started moving further and then binding data. So their tools were super valuable. Their management of the project and maintaining the timelines was very good. Now, I will tell you, I think without a key developer like Patrick, David, or myself on the project and able to go in, I found myself being involved with troubleshooting C# and other things, and I'm not a C# guy, but you can read. So handling comparison, finding out business rules that weren't obvious. You've got to have somebody who really knows the system in and out as part of the team. And I've been working very hard with teams and AnyDesk to do peer programming and comparisons and etc. So I hope that answers. If you have a follow-up, let me know.
All right.
Yeah.
Patrick, Dave, you want to jump in or expand on that?
Yeah, I'll try and answer it from my experience as well. So, the first question, what did we do? We provided our full source code over to Microsoft, and that was the primary basis. They set up their environment, they compiled our application, they have a test environment that they can run our old application or the new application they created. And that was the primary documentation source. We also gathered whatever user manuals we had and use cases, but that was fairly limited and really not that helpful and not up to date. So the main source of truth was the existing application code, which is good and bad because, junk in, junk out. But as far as the estimates, they came back with a 9-month estimate for our plan at a certain number of hours. I can't remember, but we pushed back and said, we have a busy time of a year coming up. We really want to get this done in 7. So they altered their proposal and increased the man hours, but decreased the time frame. We ended up going closer to the original time frame, but with the additional man hours. So in my case, we probably went about 20% over. We did make some sacrifices on functionality as we went, which we probably should have curated a bit more before we started. But and then there's also just an ongoing maintenance component that you should factor in to any of these costs, that there will be things that linger after the project. And that's just my experience.
Yeah, I'll kind of twist this one around a little bit, because since my project went so long, there's no reason to really talk about timelines. But I'll talk more about lessons learned. The number one lesson learned is what Tom said. Whoever was primarily involved in supporting or writing the code has to be largely involved in the project. When I say largely involved, I mean, not quite a sole job, but that's pretty much what you're doing with your life if you want to get this thing done. And that's what I have found over the last year or so as we do this. I mean, we probably had 60 man years of software development that we had to port over. So this was a significant effort. And, I found, I think, over the years, the primary limiting factor in this project was me. The fact that here I am, president of a company, having been the FoxPro guy from years back, having to be the primary guy, conduit of information, to the developers, and I just don't have the time. Just don't have the time is what it really comes down to. So you got to ensure that you have people dedicated to the project so they can answer the questions in a timely manner and ensure that the developers keep moving when they come to a stop.
I'll just comment on something that Dave said. The biggest obstacle that Macrosoft runs into as we work with clients, and I know I'm not part of the panel, is availability of the client to test the converted application, because everybody's got jobs, everybody's busy, everybody's doing a million things, and that's why you hired somebody to help convert it, because you got to run your business still. But yet we need involvement of the team to test it. And that kind of leads me to the next question, which was, what was the composition of your migration team? Not from the consultant's point, from Macrosoft's point, but what was your team like within your companies?
Not big enough. It was me.
Patrick, Tom?
One of the really good things is I've had a very close relationship with all of my users over the time, take care of things for them, like they not having to call what they call the helpless desk, writing RARs to get them access, just taking care of them. So when it comes, I can call on them when they're super tied up and busy and get them to jump in and check things. One of the lessons learned was that early on they would check it, we would get a list, Microsoft would say, yes, we got all of that. We would end up getting a sign off with exceptions from the user. Now we come back and found those weren't fixed. Well, we ended up a while ago with a dedicated Microsoft individual to get all of these things into a tracker. Originally, we were going to use VSTS to maintain all of this, and it's just too cumbersome, and the users just would not go through that excruciating process. So we ended up managing it with Excel for trackers, and that has been much better. But that's the key. The minor stuff gets missed sometimes in the fix process. But not abusing the users. In other words, I'll call on them, but I'm very careful to appreciate their time, get the answers we need, get the validation we need, and turn them loose. So that was very important. Just like you have to have a developer instantly available also.
All right, I see lots of chat going back and forth, and there seems to be an ongoing question of all three people. So how big was your application? Was it 2 forms or 200? And so I see that people have put it in the chat, but why don't we just go one at a time, and whatever quantities you want to say in terms of number of forms, number of screens, number of lines of code, how would you size your application from your perspective? And left to right, Patrick, how would you size your application?
Sure. Yeah. Just ballpark figures. We had probably about 50 forms, and there's probably of that maybe 15 to 20 that were sort of key mission critical ones, and then another 25, 30 that were just sort of do this particular function forms. We also had I would say about 100 database tables. Again, probably 30% of those were core to the application, and then another 70% were ancillary. And we had a very large report base that we built over the years. I mean, maybe it's not large, but it felt large to me, about 200 reports. A lot of back-end processing, some complex logic in various business processes. So that's about the scale of mine.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Dave?
Yeah, mine is, I put it in the chat, but we had dozens of forms and over 100 reports, but it's more complex than that because we had a ton of business logic in VB. So our software, we had to convert the VB. We've been in the process of converting all the VB stuff as well, and our software is a bit odd. I mean, it's an odd duck in that probably nearly everyone on this call, they have a schema, right? Well, our software kind of has a schema, but really doesn't have a schema. So we have a database which defines what the software should do in real time, but the user can change what the software does in real time. And how you set that up builds, in essence, the schema that can be changed at any time. So I have I can have, say 75 tables for the configuration, but then I have literally thousands of tables could have 150,000 records in each one of them. So I got data all over the place, and it's a very complex interactive system between the VB and the VFP. So anything I would tell you in terms of estimates is really not relevant to what 98% of customers or users would see, developers would see.
All right. And Tom, same question over to you. How would you size your application?
At least the IT guys thought gigantic, and so did Microsoft. I will tell you that just for one of the applications, I had shown you a different one, but we have a process that runs 24/7, 365. And what it does is it goes out to a number of sites. For instance, there's a group called Opus that maintains an index of all of the rack fuel pricing and has it at different times. Well, when we pull our data, we have like 77,000 rows that we get from them that we have to determine the prices we're going to pull for each city group. And we have to locate our 1,000 locations against their 77,000 rows. Well, and put that all together, and that's one minor thing that runs at 11:27 every day. We pull all the market prices from a company called ProMiles, totally different servers, totally different place, FTP, etc. We also go out, as I said, to the Weather Service and pull weather information. When we started going over one of the points where IT was going to do the conversion, all I did was start going over our schedule. We have a table that maintains the schedule of when each process runs. And when I got through the 3 pages of that schedule, just talking about the higher level processes, they didn't come back again. And that's the one part, and doesn't include the whole reporting system that has that carrier management, I was told, is one small piece. All of the people we purchase fuel from send invoices through a service called DTN, and that's an EDI process. They convert it to schema, an EDI schema, which turns out our mainframe guys couldn't really handle because of exceptions and the problems they had with, they couldn't handle, their stuff wasn't normalized at all, and they couldn't handle different products and so forth. So we have to massage all that incoming invoice data and then spit it back out to them clean for them to process. We also have a front end for our users to view all of that information. Now, to tell you, each one of those invoices is for like 7,500, 8,000 gallons of fuel, and with taxes and the rest, it's about 20,000 an invoice. And we have hundreds and hundreds of these coming through, and they have to monitor each to see if the contract price agrees with what they charged us, etc. I've told you about like 10% of the functionality of that one system. Our environmental system has been running since 92. We even have some data from 1988. which, as I mentioned, was valuable because the states turn on and off the reimbursable portion. And sometimes that doesn't have a back date. And so that system ties in with all of our tanks, underground tanks. We also have a commission system for incentives for the sales reps that negotiate with their people to get them to purchase more fuel from Ryder locations, and special deals are set up, and we've got to manage all of those things with the user interface and the data. So I would just I apologize for not giving you a flat. We have 1,000 forms and 400 tables and blah 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 or whatever. That's about 20% of this system. So it's I think it's pretty large.
I can confirm it big. This was a big project, and so I see there's some more questions come on. Let me just ask, how were you able to keep the wheels on the bus as you were changing them riding down the road? How did you continue to run your business as you're going through this migration?
Else jumped up. For our DOS system, we couldn't run parallel. So periodically we synchronize the data so that the user testing is more realistic. So when we turn on the .NET version, we'll turn off the DOS version. Now we've already done that with, we have a Visual Fox Pro that was for environmental audits, where they go out to each location in the company and go through a whole series of compliance audits. That one we have turned on into the new platform and have turned off our existing one. So with our Redco system, the one that runs 24/7, we're turning on and off. We're running parallel there, where we're in earlier stages, we've been syncing data. As they get the background processes going and verified, we turn off the synchronization. We just have triggers that develop, what's changed. We turn off that synchronization. I quit sending my stuff to the mainframe production tables and send it to the test system, and they send the reports to production. So we're phasing it in there. So we're running with, we're keeping it going 24/7. So that's, I don't know if that's totally clear, but ask if you want.
Clean cut over. Some of it was, continuing to share data throughout the project, and some of it was running in parallel. So it does involve. There's not a Staples easy button, set it and forget it. There's active involvement throughout. Dave's journey, I know, was a very long time because everything had to continue to work in parallel for all steps. We have 10 minutes left. So let me hit my last question here. I'll look for any other questions here. What obstacles did you face, or what surprised you the most? So let's kind of tie that to one question. What surprised you during the project, or what?
I'll reiterate what I said previously. What surprised me the most was the amount of time how important it was that I be devoted to the project, and I think that's the biggest obstacle, was my time availability to work with the developers. And we at Trace faced another obstacle, and that was that the other primary developer of our product had passed away. So an awful lot of knowledge went away with him, and I got to say, the Microsoft guy did a really good job of divining purpose out of the software that was not well documented. So the biggest hurdle was myself and availability.
Yeah, I'll second that. That it was that was the up for me as well, as finding the time. It definitely took more time than I anticipated, and you know, a lot of the things had been built so long ago that you know, just shaking off my memory of things. I didn't know if users were still using things, if you know, who was using them, what their purpose was anymore. So that was a challenge. And then getting users to be engaged with the process throughout the whole thing was also, I mean, they got very excited at the UI stage, but once it came down to, you know, interrupting their daily work, it was a challenge. So I would have brought on more resources earlier in the project from our side of the business.
They liked the screens looking pretty, but they didn't care how the wiring and the plumbing was behind the wall.
Yeah, they just assume that part will work. So, which, you know, that's not their job.
All right. Anything go better than you expected? We talked about, you know, more time, more obstacles. You know, you got to ask the other side of that question. Anything go particularly well?
I think I was really shocked by the ability to organize and read from the existing code to put together the initial system. So that was a surprise for me how well that part went.
Surprised specifically on the reports, how well those happened. I think we did those towards the end of our project, and looking at the timeline, I was pretty skeptical we would make a lot of progress on there, but I'm thinking Microsoft has some decent tooling that allows a lot of that to be automated, because that happened very quickly and fairly accurately.
Now, on my side of things, what surprised me is, you know, I mentioned that my other, you know, the guy I work with, he had passed away, and we waited on the VB6 stuff too long. And his piece was a highly complex, highly configurable, could do anything you want to in real time, calculations and computations, data collection, totally freehand, if you will. And so it was highly, highly complex. And I'm not a VB guy, so I couldn't really help the developers with the code. What I could help them with is functionality. This is what it does. This is how it does it. I have no idea, you know, what it's supposed to do. No idea how it does it, right? Their ability to dig in, analyze the code, and come up with solutions surprised me, frankly. Really surprised me.
All right. Very good. And let's make this our last question, as I see we have just about 5 minutes left. What benefit are you getting as a result of doing this?
A future.
Yeah, it has to be. As we said, this was the benefit is staying in business, and the benefit for Ryder is they can continue. These mission critical processes are now in a form that they can live with and support, and they're used to. And again, you take a company that's Fortune 500 size, and you start talking about mission critical applications depending on one guy and software that's no longer supported. For the company, that is extremely frightening. So that would be the only benefit I would see, really.
Yeah, I would agree. That's the primary benefit is, you know, the investors
Why is it
are
only
happy.
one guy? Why can't you? I mean, why are you the only? Why not bring on other developers with you?
But,
I'll tell you that, again, I'm not looking at your faces, but I don't run into a lot of FoxPro guys. I mean, I run in most of the guys that are still doing FoxPro that can talk about stuff going on in the 90s. You know, I don't know. I haven't been out to the conferences, so I can't say that there aren't a ton of young guys out there, but the IT guys I run into kind of turn up their nose at Fox, and because they don't know better.
yeah, well, and it's, I mean, if I was in my 20s, I would do the same. I mean, I would probably turn up my nose at .NET also, but really the finding talent is considerably easier in the .NET world. It's just a fact of life.
One quick story that somebody told me, and they said, let me ask you a question, Tom. It seems like what you're saying is you bought a license in 1990, 1992, maybe even a couple of them, and you've been developing for 20 or 30 years. How much has Microsoft collected from your work? How much do they collect from the stuff done in .NET, from the cloud and all? I mean, you think about the difference between a FoxPro developer writing all these massive systems that can compete against these massive .NET systems, and you'll find that Microsoft gets millions on the one side and zero on the other side, and you'll understand why Fox is no longer supported and kept down, and a lot of work is done to prevent going forward with Fox. So just a story, but it kind of was eye-opening for me.
All right, we're right at, we have 3 minutes left, so I'll give you each 1 minute. Any, Patrick, any closing comments for the group?
No, I just hope it was helpful, and hope that it, I definitely wasn't here to change anybody's mind. I'm just telling my experience. So thanks.
I'll second what Patrick said. Hope it was helpful. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out, to me through John or anyone. I'm more than happy to discuss our journey and what we did right, what we've done wrong, whatever it takes.
All right. Tom, any closing comments? Tom, you're muted. Tom, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. I was reading Charles' comments, and that's kind of what I expected. I was on the outside with, I vetted Microsoft, but I wasn't responsible. And I honestly thought it might go as Charles said. So when I've seen how it's gone, I would say I wouldn't try it with somebody else, but when I vetted Microsoft, I felt they were good, and they've stuck with, they're not perfect or we couldn't afford them, but they job and they're try to do everything they promised. And so that's where we are. I wouldn't have tried it with somebody else.
Well, I appreciate the three of you sharing your journeys. I think it resonated well with audience, and I see lots of great questions. I appreciate it. I'll give you a round of applause. If everybody online, I can give a virtual round of applause. I appreciate it. And maybe we should have a discussion like this annually at the FoxPro annual event, and maybe you guys can come out to Phoenix next year, and when we're allowed to travel again. All right. Anything else, or I'm not sure how I end this meeting, or if I'm supposed to.